Welcome to My Turn Podcast, a gaming podcast hosted by extra competitive siblings. My name's Jem and I'm joined today by my sibling Erin and my sibling Tim!
Hello! Someone's gone a bit evil.
Tim is just giving us a bit of a teaser of the episode that we have for you today. This is a gaming podcast, and because it is the month of October, we thought we'd take a little spooky trip into our favourite Halloween inspired atmosphered games. So you ready to get your spookies on, guys?
Yeah, definitely.
I'm so ready. It's the most wonderful time of the year. Honestly, Christmas can do one. I love it.
You just like all the sweet treats, don't you, Tim?
Yes, and the spoopiness.
And the baked goods.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Tim's been baking a lot the last few weeks.
In which sense?
No.
No, in the sense of making a lovely Apfelkuchen today.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, yeah, we've started with baked goods. We're going to move to some games. So what we're going to do today, we're doing something a bit different. Normally we do a games review, where we take one game each and we'll chat through it and give you some recommendations and let you know our ratings. But what we thought we'd do instead is a bit of a roundup of some of our favourite Halloween-inspired or even slightly horror-tastic games. So we've kind of had a little chat, haven't we?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And we decided we're not just going to linger on horror games per se, but we're actually going to be inspired by the whole vibe of Halloween. And should we start talking about some video games that we think we'd like to recommend?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, or the should we go kind of straight in with the hardest edge stuff and then gradually get kinder to ourselves as we go on?
Yeah, so should we get a bit murdery first?
Yeah.
And then get cute.
Yeah, sounds good.
So who would like to kick us off talking about what we've actually done?
We've written a list, haven't we? We've been very organised.
Actually very, very
Yes.
organised. So we've got
Makes a
5 what we've labelled as big grown-up horror games.
Yeah.
That's how we define them in
In other words, console games that
technical terminology.
yes. Yeah, and then after that we've got puzzle platformers and then finishing off on board games, aren't we?
Yeah, so we're doing the full spectrum today.
Yep.
Who wants to kick us off with some of these big grown-up
I mean,
horror
the first one written there, which is spelt awfully, Dialing Light, which I think is meant to say Dying Light, but, you know, me and typing
You wrote that list.
isn't fantastic, to be honest. It's not a good combination, but, you know, I've lived with that my whole life, so I can understand myself. Dying Light.
Why don't you tell us about Dying Light, Erin, because you're the one who's played it and the one who wanted to recommend it.
So, this kind of ticks a few boxes for me, because not only is it a kind of zombie horror game, but it's also open world. Kind of reminds me a little bit of like the Far Cry series in the way that it's done. Yeah, it's open world. You've got like certain missions that you have to achieve, and there's this whole overriding kind of theme of you pretty much have to get all your missions done before it gets dark, and you have to get to a safe place, because as soon as it becomes dark, there's like another type of zombie that comes out at night. So your daytime zombies are like your typical horror zombies that are a bit slow and lethargic, but there's lots of them about. However, I can't remember what the name of them was, but these nighttime zombies that come out, they're like really quick and super powerful and bloody hard to kill. And if they spot you, you're fucked, basically.
Right. So
yeah,
it goes from kind of, what is it, like what's Barbara? What's that film? I always forget.
Night of the Living Dead.
Night of the Living
Goes from
Dead.
Night of the Living Dead to 28
days later. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That, in zombie film references, that makes sense to me now.
yeah.
I love that I can never remember Night of the Living Dead's title. And I
Coming
always
to
just
get
say,
you, Barbara. Yeah, exactly. By the way, do we have any strong preferences over how fast zombies should move? I come down very heavily on they should be shuffling.
yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I agree.
But this is what makes this game really, really good, that you've kind of got the best of both worlds, really. And the fact you have those super powerful bastard zombies gives you that time pressure. If you only have a day and as soon as it's dark, that's it, you need to get somewhere safe. And you'll often be chased by these zombies that you can't turn around, you just have to leg it. And even then, at the best of the times, most of the times they'll catch up to you. I think the only thing that will stop them is basically like ultraviolet light or some sort of light, like almost natural light source that scares them away. So you might have like a few like light beams on buildings that are considered safe places that you have to try and hide out in when it is that time of night.
Oh, I don't like it.
Oh, it's brilliant. I love it. I mean, like I said, because there's almost like 2 or 3 types of game in this game, where you have the open world exploratory thing going on, where you're just roaming around the city, finding little side missions to do. And obviously, as you go on, you become more powerful and get better weapons and are able to do a lot more in the game. You've got that, but then you have got that horror, horror game in the background.
So would you say it's genuinely a scary game? Like, do you get scared playing it?
At night it is.
Yeah.
Like, in the day, it's pretty tame and you might get a zombie sneak up on you, but as soon as it becomes night, you're just like, I just want to be inside. Honestly, it does. That's why I absolutely love it, and I think it's a good recommendation. Just the fact it is quite a dynamic game. And also with the storyline as well, where you're trying to, I think there's like a bunch of gangsters that have kind of taken over a city.
Wait, zombie gangsters?
No, they're not the. So your mission, I think you're trying. Oh goodness, I can't really remember 100%. But your mission isn't anything to do specifically with the zombies. It's actually saving people that are within the city. Mm-hmm. But there's like kind of a rival gang of people that are going around and just like causing havoc to your group of people, and you have to basically save a few of them.
I kind of like the idea of zombie gangsters, and I'm now disappointed that there's not a game.
Well, you've got like a mob basically of the bad guys, but then there's also zombies as well. So again, lots of genres coming together for this game, but I think executed really, really well. And that's.
Do you remember what you played this on when you played it?
Yeah, PlayStation 4 actually. I think I actually played it when it came out in 2015. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the hype around it and like the way it was described really sold it to me. So I was like straight on it and pretty much completed it within a few months. However, I got to the very end and then I just left it for ages. I did one of those kind of things where you get to the end and it comes to that bit. It's like, if you enter here, there's no going back. So I was like, all right, I'll leave that.
Yeah, I do that. We've discussed this a lot on the podcast. Yeah. There are some games where you're just happier to just leave that bit undecided.
Fear of the final warning and bosses. Yeah. I've got to make a confession, as this is a gaming thing. I have never fully played a Resident Evil game, but I have seen all of the terrible films. I feel like I got the balance wrong there. The only time I've ever played it is when Jem, you let me play about 10 minutes of Village that we did recently. But have you guys played one to completion?
Yes, nice segue, Tim. Very good segue. Sticking with zombies, on our list we have the Resident Evil canon. People have different preferences with these games. I've played a couple of them. I remember, I didn't complete it because I didn't own a PlayStation, but I do remember playing Resident Evil 1 on PlayStation.
Wow.
The PlayStation. A friend's older brother had it. Can't tell you much about it except I didn't like the zombies. And that really hasn't changed for me. I really hate zombies in games, and fast zombies can fuck off. They're even worse. Strong, fast zombies, no thank you. Have you played any of them?
I think I've only played the first one as well, and I think I used to play it at my cousin's house. The ones that lived across the road from us. I'm sure I played it there, but no, I haven't played any of the more modern ones.
Yeah, so I've played completed Village, and I'm a bit of a chunk way through 7, which is Biohazard, and I watched my partner play the remastered. I think it was 2. I think it's 2. So I haven't played as many as a lot of people, but I do want to do a shout out for it, because they are obviously the sort of quintessential zombie console game. And they, as you said, Tim, inspired a whole kind of canon of movies. There's now the new one coming out, which apparently is taking more from the classic games. In terms of, even, I think in the trailer you can see they've dipped in even some stuff from some of the cutscenes in the games. So I think they're honouring the fandom there, because obviously there's a huge fandom for Resident Evil. But from what I've played of, I really enjoyed Village, but from what I played of 7, I think Resident Evil Biohazard is probably going to be the one that I really recommend to people. It's pretty damn scary, but it's also not, like, it's not OTT with the zombies. It's not like wave upon wave upon wave of zombies. There are also just weird sort of redneck creepy humans in it as well. And there's a lot of puzzling to sort of escape rooms in an old beat up horror house. So it's got a horror feel to it on many levels. It's beyond just being zombies. It's the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And you kind of feel like you're in, what's the film? Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like, the family have that kind of feel to them. And really early on in the game, you are kind of being force-fed gross food. So yeah, it's got that kind of vibe. So
it sounds similar to mine, though. You've got other elements in there. It's not just a scary game.
Yeah.
Which I think,
And I think the Resident Evil series has sort of played around with what it is. It's not always the same thing.
Yeah.
So the games have sort of evolved and moved the story on.
There's a lot of zombie games to choose from when it comes to video games, but we have managed to find a few others we'd recommend that are not zombie related, right?
Yes, we have. One of which, one of my probably favourite games ever. I think we mentioned in the last pod as well, Alan Wake, which is a 2010 game by Remedy and Microsoft Studios. And we used to live together, Tim, and you had it on your Xbox 360, and that's how come I got to play it.
Did indeed. I remember so much about the opening atmosphere of it, because it really takes time to build the story, and from taking that time going across on the boat, across the lake, and it's all very opening credits of a Stephen King film from the 70s or 80s, and you just immediately get invested in the story, which is why the horror moments hit a little bit harder, I think, than if you're just blasting up zombies.
Yeah, and it is really nice that the story, I mean, not a spoiler at all, because if you watch any game trailer, it dips in kind of what happens, but as you start realising that any kind of work of art you're creating, or any fictional strand that you're creating starts to be realised in that location. It's weaved in so nicely. And as you said, it's really creepy ass storytelling. And just the fear of the dark. You have a torch, and you got a bit like you said with the dying light.
Is it one of these like, oh, you've only got so much battery?
Oh yeah,
and that's really shit. Yeah. Oh no.
And it's a bit like you said with dying light. It's creeping towards light sources or running towards light sources as quickly as possible. But it isn't. Yeah, as you say, it isn't just an escape game. It's figuring things out. It's being along with the characters, and you invest in some of those characters as well. I love that game. That's the kind of game that you feel like you are almost reading a novel while you're playing that game, which I think is what they've gone for, because you are playing a horror writer.
Yeah.
It does unravel in a really nice way. Yeah. And you definitely want to sleep with the lights on for a while after that.
Oh my God.
I think the torch mechanic in games is like, it's used quite a lot, but it never
quite
gets...
cliche, but yeah.
It is a cliche, but it never gets old. It's just such an effective way.
Yeah, it's so tense.
Yeah, revealing things to you and navigating. I think the only game I can think of that I was more scared of than playing Alan Wake was probably Alien Isolation. A little bit of it I played.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Did you not? You didn't get through the whole game?
No. I've only played a bit. It's one of those ones that I put on my list. And I was like, I will get around to this at some point, and I kept playing sort of opening sections of it. Never got much further than that though.
Yeah, so you've played it as well, haven't you?
Yeah,
And
I
played
haven't completed it. There was one particular, I can't remember exactly where, but there was one part the alien kept finding me in the locker. Every time, no matter how long I'd hide, I'd end up getting eaten. So
Yeah.
There's a lot of hiding, isn't there?
Yes.
Because you get too scared to make that move, and you end up just sort of staying still because it's easier. And you go, it's not the game, is it?
I think one of the reasons that Alien Isolation, even though I'm the same, I just never managed to get through the game for various reasons. Mostly because I got to a point where I was just too scared, and I'm a wimp. But one of the reasons I'd still recommend it is that it's a really different setup. You're going in with a character who isn't like military trooper level of strength with loads of unlimited weapons and unlimited bullets. Like, you have to gather resources, you have to hide, you have to sneak about. It's really atmospheric, and I think the use of sound in that game is really damn scary. Just like, if you know the films, it's that kind of awkward dripping that makes you think, is there something above you, salivating, and the saliva's dripping on the floor, like thinking of the Alien films. Or like there'd just be a gas pipe that would just go behind you, like, shh. And you're like, oh God, I don't like it. And I do remember on that game there's like ridiculous modes for playing it, and I think the hardest mode is called Nightmare. Where you basically die straight away. And I played it on super easy, and you basically hardly ever, I mean, you do encounter it, but you hardly ever do. But the noises and the sounds, it got to a point where it just, the game got really hard and scary, and I didn't like it.
It's too tense sometimes.
And it really is like the most crucial aspect of either horror games or horror films is the sounds, because you find like if you turn off the sound of anything, it instantly becomes unscary. It doesn't matter.
Yes.
Like when there's a film or whatever, like the sound goes, you're okay. But if you look away from it but keep the sound going, you still get that attention. Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. I mean, I knew people that played Alien Isolation in the dark on murder mode or nightmare mode, sorry. And it might as well have been murder mode. Because they're just crazy. I don't know. Like, life's not scary enough. They want you to do that to themselves.
I really do need to commit to going back to it. So maybe this Halloween, because it's been out for like 7 years now. It was 2014 Creative Assembly Sega, FYI. Yeah. But I think if you've put a game off for 7 years, either you've got to play it or pretend or give it up.
I think if I go back to it now, because I'm playing, like, I've gone harder into horror games, I think I'd be braver now, but I think at the time I was playing it, I was mostly playing puzzle games or action adventures, so I wasn't really dipping my toe into the horror waters. Speaking of which, a game that is often cited as the scariest video game ever, that we're all aware of, we've all probably watched someone play a bit and never had the Billy Balls to have a go. The game, of course, I'm talking about is Dead Space. I think specifically Dead Space 2, people credit as being probably the scariest horror game. And I certainly remember having to leave the room when a friend of mine was playing that because I was too scared, and it was broad daylight and there was lots of us there, and I was like, I just can't watch this. And that's like a 2008 game. So like if you look at it now, I've actually re-downloaded it because it's on Xbox Game Pass. But
you're actually going to play it?
I'm gonna try.
Oh God.
I might video myself.
Yes, please video yourself, because
I'll probably
be
running on the spot like I was playing Resident Evil. Anytime there's lots of zombies, like my feet start running. I just can't help it. But yeah, I mean, that is definitely one that I think if you look at any video games, sort of horror game roundups, that's always on there.
What is the horror in that game? Like, what is so scary about it? Because I've only seen like a few cutscenes, and some of them are horrendously gory.
Yeah.
I mean, I think one of the really famous ones is the eye
Drilling
operation
thing.
driller scene where you have to keep your eye focused on the needle. Otherwise, I don't know why the machine just goes completely straight through your head. But apparently that happens if you don't look at a needle straight
I mean,
up.
the way I think I always felt about the game, I think because there's a film called Event Horizon. Have you seen that?
Yeah,
I feel like they stir the same kind of sort of feeling of unease in that, like, Event Horizon, just in summary, is a film where a kind of spaceship basically goes to hell and back, and it kind of carries all that evil within it. And Dead Space sort of has that sort of hellishness, and you do get this sort of like it feels like a place where the things living on it are kind of tortured versions of something you recognise. And so when you sort of, and also the as we said, the sound, the visuals, like certainly for its time, the game looked really quite not realistic. I mean, it is realistic, I guess, for its time, but it certainly had a look and feel to it that had that sort of hellishness, that nastiness, and the building of tension, I think, in that game is like immense.
Well, as we know with kind of horror directing, a lot of the horror is what's in your head. It's the in-between bits that you have to fill in for yourselves. The famous shower scene in Psycho, you never actually see her get stabbed. You just think you do because of the way it's cut. It's that sort of stuff, isn't it? Like the graphics don't have to be excellent. The gore doesn't have to be precise, but it has to give you enough suggestion that you fill in the gaps yourself and spook yourself out.
I almost feel like graphics can actually take away from the feeling of horror, actually, because I feel like maybe it was just where I was younger, but I feel like older school, even with horror films, older school things like that, I feel like have more atmosphere about them, whereas things that are over realistic just don't feel right to me. I don't know if you ever found that, but I remember one particular thing. I know this isn't necessarily a horror film, but like the Saw films, I think the latter
is a horror
ones.
film.
Well, yeah, but they're quite gory horror rather than like. I guess there's different genres
horror.
of horror. Yeah. True. All right. Fair enough. But yeah, I think we saw like the 7th one, and everything was just trying to be so realistic and so like clear that it just didn't give you that tension of like you said, the unknown.
Well, that's because you don't get involved because there's no real kind of good story. You know what? This is all getting far too bloody and spooky, though. Can we tone it down a bit and go to something a little less horrible?
Tim on fire with the segues there. So what we've also done, so we've mentioned kind of 5 big grown-up horror games, as we called them. What we've also done is a list of puzzle, platformers, and point-and-click type games.
Yeah.
Maybe
I wouldn't say they're necessarily less creepy, though.
Yeah, they're creepy, but they're not as graphic, let's say.
Yeah,
maybe.
That's fair.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It was all getting too bloody. a little less blood.
So at the top of our list, we've got Limbo, which is a really, really well-known kind of puzzle platformer. All kind
Evil
of
games.
You haven't played it.
I just have to look at it. There's spiders. Spiders are bad.
It's really dark kind of puzzles where you have to traverse various platforms or various obstacles, and they're all pretty torturous and nasty. It's actually, a bit like Saw, but in a very cartoony style. And you do meet your doom in pretty horrific ways. But again, the style is not. I mean, it's very cartoony. It's all monochrome.
Majority of it's almost like silhouette images,
silhouettes,
isn't it?
exactly. So you're not really looking at blood spatter and bullet holes in people's faces and things like that.
No.
So it's definitely got a different vibe. Any less creepy? Don't
No,
think so.
absolutely not. And this again goes back to what I was saying, because a lot of it is left to imagination, where it is just such a basic image. It makes it even more creepier. It almost makes you feel like when you have those nightmares where you can't quite see what is haunting you. Have you ever had that? Been haunted by just shadows?
No, I remember. Tell me more.
This game, whenever I've seen it, reminds me of like my childhood nightmares.
Oh wow!
Like literally the silhouettes moving in a room and things like that. Oh, terrifying!
I always have nightmares about a white mouse with red eyes.
Oh, that's an albino mouse.
Yeah, I don't know why. She's just always just appear in a dream, and then that would suddenly be a nightmare.
Oh my goodness!
I also had a nightmare which I said was a recurring one called this. I called it the Sesame Street nightmare, where I'd
Big Bird
be
came and got you.
Kind of like Cookie Monster, I think.
You were afraid of the Cookie Monster?
Not in real life, but in my dream it'd kind of like be bad, and it would come and hunt you down, and I'd always be the last kid in the house and like hiding in a cupboard or something. Anyway, I digress. Yes. What's next on the list?
The one that I've played, Inside.
Yeah, so these are both Inside and Limbo are both by Playdead. They're often sold in a bundle together as well. Limbo was 2010, Inside was 2016. Very similar vibe.
Similar vibe, but I think there's a bit more going on graphically inside. Even though it's not actually monochrome, it feels like that, but there is an element of very faded, washed out colour in the game.
It's like the joy had been sucked out of it, and that's part of the horror, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, I think you might see like the smallest glimpse of sunshine at the beginning, then it just gets darker, and it's again you're moving through just like some unknown lands, really. You start off like in the farmland, and you end up going through like some factories, then you're in a laboratory, and you just seem to go deeper and deeper to what feels like a nightmare. And the further you go into it, the more haunting things there are in there, the more things that are after you trying to kill you. And you're just essentially like a little kid almost in this horrendous world where you've got like full-grown men chasing you, these weird dogs chasing after you, machines trying to kill you, creepy like
that's more of a
mermaids.
survival, isn't it, rather than just crossing obstacles. That's actually surviving.
I mean there is definitely the puzzle element in it. The puzzles aren't necessarily that hard. It's again just the atmosphere and the tension that's created in it, and the not knowing what you're doing or where you're going. Which also, like,
you actually just trembled then. I saw you thinking about
it. It's really weird. I hated this game, but I can appreciate that it's an amazing game. And I'm sure people who are into that genre would really like it. But for me, I had to complete it because I hated it so much.
You tried it to be over.
I couldn't leave it unresolved. And I didn't even choose to play this game. My partner didn't. She gave me the control. That was it.
She couldn't cope and gave it to you, and you hate that kind of game. Oh, bless you. And that kind of links onto, and again, this game is often sort of bundled with Limbo and Inside. That brings us on to Little Nightmares. There's two of them now. So one was from 2017, and then one came out in 2020 from Tarsier Studios and Bandai Namco. And we've reviewed all of these games we've just chatted about, actually. And Little Nightmares sort of also plays into that kind of, it's slightly cartoony, almost Tim Burton-esque, but really nasty consequences, let's say, if you miss a platform, don't run quick enough, don't hide in the right place. The clues in the title is pretty nightmarish. I wasn't as much of a fan of the second one as the first one. I thought the first one felt more unique, and I enjoyed the sort of story more of the first one, and it felt less repetitive, I think, than the second one. But I still would really recommend them if you want something creepy. But again, it is nasty. If you get caught, it's pretty horrible, because you play as kind of looks like a little girl, and in the second one like a little boy, and it is pretty nasty when you get caught, but it isn't shooting zombies in the head. No. So it's got a very different feel.
No, it's as well, like from what I've seen of it, a lot of the, I guess, monsters are almost like deformed or like distorted real world things, because I think there was one particular, I think like kind of a boss thing. It was like in a nursery, really long arms that would just go around the floor and try and grab you.
Yeah.
Or those really large chef things.
They look like kind of pigs almost. Yeah. It's sort of like they're like distorted creatures or distorted fairy tale characters. There's one that sort of looks a bit like a slug and a man hybrid. You know, it's like, everything is very nightmarish and grotesque, I'd say, even though it's very cartoony. Have you played those ones, Tim?
No, I haven't played those ones. When you're talking about that, though, I was just thinking about how many games I feel like I've played over the past couple of years that have been Tim Burton-esque. Like, his art direction lends itself so well to video games. Like, I feel I've seen more video games that have been inspired by Tim Burton than films.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Just lends itself so well to that world.
Yeah, it's the kind of like melancholy death of Oyster Boy type sketches.
Yeah.
You can see a sort of, I'm assuming, quite big inspiration taken from that sort of aesthetic, I guess, for some of these games. And no less horrific than some of the zombie games.
Speaking of zombie games and like narrative stuff, I love the Telltale games, may they rest in peace.
Yes,
But
I
they
miss them.
they hadn't finished this series when they announced the company was closing, but they sort of got an extension to just finish this off, which was the Walking Dead series.
Yeah.
Which fits very well in our discussion today.
Yeah, and I mean, they are, as with all the Telltale stories, they're quite point and clicky. There is a level of every decision you make will impact something that you get offered or something that happens to your character later. But the Walking Dead series, I think, was their, the thing that really made them very successful, won a lot of awards for them. And they've taken the story in a few strands as a kind of main series. And then there was a sort of secondary series with a little girl, and that was really good as well. But they're really, I just for a long time couldn't play zombie games because I was too scared. So for me, these, because they're so story driven, because they are based on comic books, and you feel like you're reading, watching a series and playing a game at the same time with the Telltale games. So I found them a lot more accessible, and I found that I cared a lot more about the characters. And yeah, they're really nice games, and obviously RIP Telltale, but you can still get the games, and I highly recommend if you haven't played them and you want something that's a bit less scary but still has the creepiness, still has zombies, so very on Halloween theme. I recommend people get involved with those.
Now I've got to ask, does it have a lot of relationship to the series? Do you have those characters in it?
I gave up on the series, but
the first season was amazing. Then it just tailed off horrendously.
But The Walking Dead was a comic book series first, which I did read, and I feel like the game sort of tapped into the things I like more about the comic books than about the TV series. So
they did create unique characters and stories, though.
Yeah.
So there's so you don't know like how it's meant to progress. Can't kind of cheat on it.
Yeah, but in terms of the vibe, I feel like the vibe is very different to the sort of tone of the series. It just doesn't feel that way. It's more, it's warmer, if that makes sense. I think the characters are like, you're just more drawn to the warmth of the characters that are nice to each other, and then there's more jeopardy when some characters are more selfish. And so you have to make some of those decisions about keeping resources, about hiding, about sharing things with people. So yeah, that's what makes the game good. There is some jeopardy, but it feels more human rather than throwing you into a kind of horror epic. Yeah.
Hey, last time I was with you, we chatted about Myst, and I said it was like the OG CD-ROM game. It was the biggest selling game for like 9 years. But on the specific platform, I believe, of the CD-ROMs, it was eclipsed for a year, the year after it launched, by The Seventh Guest.
Yes, I remember you mentioning
this briefly. I'm going to tell you about it in the context of this Halloween stuff, because I think it's the first like adult game I remember playing, away from the 80s platformers and all that sort of stuff. All of a sudden we had the magic of CD-ROM, and The Seventh Guest was rated 18. I was 11.
Oh dear, Tim.
Because it's got horror, like proper horror. It's a mix of graphics, moving around a haunted mansion and solving puzzles, but it also had video, which was what made it such a big game on CD-ROM in those days, because you actually had to have kind of working video of actors portraying the ghosts of the characters. You're trying to unravel their story. As you move through the house and you solve puzzles, you would then get video clips which would tell you a bit more about what was going on. So it was much more evolved than Myst, only a year later. But I think it had a little bit of sexual content in it as well.
Rude.
A little bit of sexual content. But it's a good horror story. It's like classic creepy old man is a toy maker. He sort of makes a deal with a demon and steals the souls of children into these toys to feed the demon. And he needs one more child's soul, so he invites 6 guests to come to his creepy haunted mansion. And whoever delivers the final child's soul to him will get an eternal life. And you're trying to figure out like this murder mystery of who's taken that child to be murdered, who has survived kind of the haunting. So you're kind of going through trying to survive the mansion at the same time watching the ghosts of people who either did or didn't. But also there's the story that comes before that with the demon and the toy maker.
So is it quite puzzling? Is it deduction based sort of stuff? Or?
It's very puzzly. You don't have to solve the murder mystery yourself. You don't have to solve it as part of the gameplay. That's the reward you get for solving the puzzles. Okay. But yeah, it's lots of kind of like there's maze things. There's that game where you have like a grid of 9 things, and if you click on one coffin, it opens 3 of them randomly, and then you can click a coffin and it closes them, and you've got to have them all open or closed by the end of it. Those sorts of games, put all the queens on a chessboard without them being able to take each other.
So you definitely need a pen and paper.
You need some pen and paper, you need some logic, you need quite a lot of patience for a couple of games. But I believe it's available as a mobile game. It got kind of remastered in the maybe the late noughties or something like that. So you can still go back and play it, and I think it's worth it even now for such an old game.
I might check it out because I really enjoyed going back and playing Myst again. So if it's going to tantalise those puzzling taste buds and be Halloween themed,
yes,
great. What's left?
So we're going on to board games now. Now, interestingly, Seventh Guest involves VHS tapes. So does our next game, actually, Atmosphere.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, I mean, Seventh Guest was on a CD-ROM, but Atmosphere, which was only 2 years before that, in 1991, the first version of it, I remember getting it, and then you get a VHS you have to put in, and you all sit around, and it plays. In the first version, he's called the Gatekeeper, this kind of creepy, angry, hooded, like emperor guy. And as you are going around the board, it's kind of fairly standard board game without the video. You're going around, you're collecting keys. You get 6 keys to help you get to the end, and each one gives you like some bonus skills to help you progress in the game. But you only have an hour to do it, and that hour is played out through the length of the VHS. And every few minutes, this guy will just suddenly appear and shout at you, and you wet yourself. And he'll pick on whoever's turn it was. When you were mid-gameplay, you have to stop, moving or rolling the dice, and he'll be like, right, you have to do some sort of terrible forfeit or other. And you always have to remember when he appears to say, yes, my gatekeeper. Otherwise, you get punished.
Yes. Oh. I remember this. And I remember, as I said, poor man's Emperor. I meant, obviously, Emperor Palpatine, because he looks like the Emperor in Star Wars. And doesn't he kind of age throughout the game? He gets scarier.
His eyes get glowier, and he gets more angry and darker,
But it was one of those games where as you were playing it, you were so scared of him popping up on your turn that you'd be like literally rushing the game, like chucking things everywhere and just like, crashing, knocking cups over. Well, certainly in our household, we were knocking cups over. I just really remember that game was great at creating a lot of tension.
So scary and panicky, especially when you kind of try to get it as dim as you can in there for Atmosphere, but so that you can still see, what you're doing on the board. It was a heady mix. They also had like a series of expansions that were based on the characters you play are a zombie or a witch or a vampire. It doesn't really have any effect in the game, but they did sequels to it. So they would do like a new hour-long video that was. The second one was Baron Samedi, and he gradually turned into more of a rotting zombie as it went on. And there was Elizabeth Bathory, who is the vampire, the 4th game, and she gradually turned into more and more bat-like and hideous. The makeup jobs on the sequels were actually really good.
Yeah, because I played, we had the original one, and then I think we had a second one, which I think was on CD. Or like on not DVD. Yeah, no, it must have been DVD, I guess, an early DVD. And it was like in a yellow or a goldy box, but the first one was kind of purple. I don't know. I feel like I played another one, but it was the same kind of guy. I don't remember it being a different character, but that's interesting. Yeah, I didn't realise it had so many different expansions.
Yeah, I loved it. It's a great game. Really great.
Yeah, really, really good fun. Another game that I personally really loved and remembered was a game called Ghost Castle, which was a board game, but it was kind of a board game where you built a kind of Ghost Castle structure out of cardboard. A lot of these games in those days had like pop-up bits. And that actually came out for the first time in 1970. So it's really old, but you basically, it was getting your characters around the ghost castle, avoiding things, trying not to get killed at the end. There was a skull that like fell down a tower or something.
Yeah, it's basically like a chase game. It's get to the end as soon as possible, but there were certain danger spots. If you landed on it, you would which was always the most fun part of the game, drop a skull down a tower and it would randomly come out on one of the 4 quadrants that you were in.
It.
And if you got knocked over, you had to go all the way back to the beginning.
Yes, it was like Snakes and Ladders, but with skulls and more Jeopardy.
Yeah, exactly.
And moving pieces that like had little cardboard stands. So you had like little figures that were just basically cardboard and moved around this little set. But yeah, I just really, really loved that. I think it was one of those sort of kids games that was really replayable and didn't break.
Played it a lot as a kid. And it doesn't break, no, because it's just cardboard. It's just hard cardboard.
Yeah, loved it. What other board games did we write down here on our lovely list?
Werewolf, I think, comes next. Now, Werewolf is interesting because it's been very kind of widely marketed as a card game in the past few years. That I know I've been to a lot of like parties and gatherings where people have busted out. It's a good party game. But actually, its origins go back to 1986, where it was created as a game called Mafia. And it didn't necessarily kind of have any components to it. So we call it a board game, but really you can do it without any pieces because it's a game of social deduction and lying and so forth. But you can really just have one person, facilitate the session and say, you're a werewolf. Quietly, and then everyone else is villagers and off you can go. You don't need any pieces to play it. So it's kind of like a party game, but now it's become partly a board game as well.
Yeah, well, someone wanted to sell stuff, didn't they? So, but it is, I think if you don't have the imagination or the facilitator, as you mentioned, who can structure a game, basically of any theme, to be honest, where some people are against some other people and it's all secretive, you might as well get the boxed up game because it's all there for you and it's a lot of fun. You played that with us as well, Erin, on one of my birthdays.
Yes.
Where you have to, and it's kind of an advanced wink murder at the end of the day, isn't it? It's like, it involves eye opening and closing and a bit of bluffing and social deduction. Like, it's just great.
I kept getting killed though. Even when I wasn't the werewolf. I'm not such a good actor.
Tim and I, however, are very good at that game.
Yeah.
I
always win the bluffing games.
Bluffing. Yeah, but definitely one to recommend, especially to big parties. If you play, it's called Ultimate, I think, or One Night Werewolf. That goes up to quite a few people. I think you can have like 20 people or something playing that.
Yeah. You could
if
create your
you do
own
it
party
yourself.
themes around it as well, can't you? You can make it more of a bloodier Halloween affair if you really wanted to. You could have forfeits for the people who die, like get a bucket of blood dumped on them.
And one thing I would say is that this game is definitely compatible with drinking.
Yes.
There's no bits you're going to spill a pint on. And then another game that Erin and I played quite a lot, Betrayal of the House on the Hill.
On the House?
On the House.
It's on the House. We looked it up, yeah.
On the Betrayal is so confusing because of the TV series, which is called...
Well, the TV series is The Haunting of Hill House, isn't it?
Yes.
But there are films called, The House on Haunted Hill as well.
Yes.
Which are different things.
Classics. They're all different things, but they all involve a house and a hill
hills
and
being
some
on
haunting.
things.
So it's like, but this is we didn't write down the year that this was published. Bad notes, Erin.
No, we didn't. Oh, I'm so sorry. We missed that one out.
He's going to find it right now. But this is a board game that works really nicely if you like something that's kind of quick to pick up, but also has the ability to sort of stretch your imagination and your strategy play as well. So basically you start with a really simple kind of board. It plays as a house, but as you play the game, you open up more rooms and you open up more floors and you open up more levels. So it's one of those games where as you're passing through the house, you're kind of turning over cards which become an attic or a staircase.
Yeah.
So you're moving around a space which you unfold through playing the game.
Yeah.
And then at some point you activate haunting, and that's when it gets like, you get a situation, you get a book where you have to read what that
You essentially get a scenario that you have to resolve.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that you have to resolve. And that sort of initiates the sort of end stage of the game. So it's a game with multiple styles weaved into it, would you say?
Yeah. It's a really cleverly thought out game because there's a lot of elements. The way you pick up pieces to the house, and then also those scenarios that you uncover, mean that the game doesn't really ever get played the same twice, or it's extremely, extremely unlikely. It's all quite random. So even though obviously the game is the same, every time you play it, it does have a different... Yeah, it's always a different game in some respects. Yeah,
it kind of randomly generates levels.
Yeah.
So even though the book only has a limited amount of scenarios, you still get there in a different way.
Yeah.
And so in that way, it almost does work like a computer game.
Yeah.
A bit like the board game Pandemic did, where you're kind of being given stimulus in different orders, and then you're trying to sort of weave around that with what you've got and pick up items. And certainly in this game, there are little items that you can pick up as well that might just appear in a room, or like in a chest. Is it?
Yeah,
chest?
I think there are chests and like safes and things like that.
Yeah, like they just appear, like they kind of just randomly thrown into rooms and stuff. Yes, it's just it is a fun game, and also there's an element of strategy because at some point everyone goes against someone else because that person sort of is the haunted character. Yeah. So
character,
and it can be one character or sometimes two, or like so the game is really great. And I think if you like a board game that involves a bit of strategic thinking,
a bit of exploration as well.
It takes a bit longer, but it's really quite easy to pick up. It's a really fun one and very replayable, as you said.
Yeah,
100%. Definitely love that game.
Yeah, I've got one that's technically a video game, but I would say is much more like a digital board game.
Oh, go on,
and that's one of the games in the Jackbox Party collection that I think they must have made a fortune during lockdown pandemic.
Yeah, everyone played
because it was like the closest we could get to sort of co-gaming board game stuff. But there's a particular game in there called Trivia Murder Party.
Yeah.
So it is, it's a little bit quiz show, Trivial Pursuit sort of style in terms of the gameplay, but the atmosphere is that you're going through some sort of Saw-like psycho killer's murder house, and if you get something wrong, not only do you not get points, you might end up being killed.
And it's so funny as well. The voiceover in that, I think, is so good. The voice actors are just brilliant. The tone of it is really, really funny and tongue-in-cheek, and as you say, it's kind of sending up that sort of Saw torture-y horror, slasher horror vibe, but with trivia.
Yeah, it's a guy who's put more thought into his sassy one-liners than he has his traps.
Yeah.
Like that's the vibe we get from him. But the gameplay was actually fantastic because when you do get killed, that doesn't mean you're out of the game, because you can still sabotage the players that are trying to continue, answer their questions correctly and escape. And that particularly comes into play in the very final round, where you have to answer questions to race sort of down a track, essentially, towards the exit. But the ghosts of all the people who didn't survive the preceding trivia round are chasing after you. And if they catch up with you, you become dead and they come back to life. So even if you go out early in the game, you still get every chance of winning at the last minute. It's devious.
That bit I absolutely loved when we were playing it.
Yeah.
We got very, very competitive at the end of that game because we played it quite a few times in lockdown, didn't we? There was a load of us online playing it. Very, very funny. Yeah, I really, really like those games, and I'm looking forward to sort of playing them, obviously on a screen, but with people in the same room, which is kind of how they were originally designed, but it just so happened that they worked so well when people were in different locations as well. So yeah, I mean, go them. They've had a really good 18 months probably. So highly recommend those Jackbox games. And I think that brings us to the end of the games that we wanted to talk about. So we've done some big grown-up horror games. We've done some puzzly, platformy. I can't speak today, point and click. We've done some board games. I
mean, speaking of board games, one that we actually started playing today, which looks quite promising, which kind of fits into this genre as well.
We'll give you a little preview.
Yeah, talking about Bloodborne. Goodness. So yeah, the Bloodborne card game, which was obviously based on the video game. I don't think any of us have actually played it before.
No, not the game.
So we went
into
this
game.
not really knowing what to expect, but we were actually quite pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, it's another one of these games that looks a bit intimidating when you look at the box and the amount of pieces and the amount of rules. But actually, we managed to pick it up and get going with it pretty quickly, and we formed the Monster Slaying Alliance.
We did. I think it's worth mentioning that to anyone who wants to pick up the game, is that although, you know, a lot of the cards and the instructions encourage you to want to win and dick the other people over in the game, for starters, we actually just did it collaboratively, and it was still good fun. And I think it's a good way to get to know how the game works before you go too deep.
Definitely.
Also, I think if you are too much of a dick, really, and start screwing people over early, you just kind of end up making it more difficult for yourself. So you have to be very balanced in your approach. But there's a lot of opportunity that could make it very tempting to go down that route.
I think it's about holding your nerve and waiting for the right time to stab someone in the back.
Speaking of holding your nerve, I just wanted to mention, as it's coming up to Halloween, quintessential Halloween game that people play in real life, apple bobbing.
It's such a classic. I probably haven't done it since I was a child, but I would be definitely willing to give it a go.
I mean, I've got some apples.
Like we'd have to COVID test ourselves and then get some sanitized apples and then some super sanitized water, and then we should do it.
I feel like we could just make a COVID-friendly version where we just stick a hook on our head and use our foreheads to just scoop
like
it
the
up.
ducks at the fun fair.
Exactly.
We'll turn ourselves into the hooked up.
They'd have to be like sharp spikes, though, wouldn't they? Because there's nothing on an apple you can hook. You'd have to impale it with a headbutt.
Or like a little fishing net. Scoop it up.
Hey, do you know where apple bobbing comes from, by the way?
No.
So, apple bobbing comes to us at the same time as apple trees, which is that they were brought to Britain by the Romans.
Oh, go on, Romans.
Yeah, we didn't have apple trees before then. I mean, I think apples originally come from like Central Asia or something, but the Romans were cultivating them. They brought them to Britain when they popped along because who doesn't love apples? And with that, they brought this tradition of apple bobbing. And that in turn comes from their celebration of their goddess Pomona.
Is that why apples are called poms?
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same root. It's the same.
I just remembered some French.
Yeah, her name basically means from the Latin roots, but her name does basically mean apple tree.
Oh wait, it's pom potato.
No, that's pomme de terre.
Pomme de terre. That's apple of the earth.
Apple of the earth. Oh, there we go. No, my French was good. I doubted myself. Whoops.
But the tradition they had was that it was either apple bobbing in water or tied by a piece of string, and it was sort of a matchmaking ritual like you would have on Valentine's Day. That if the first sort of maid to get her gums around an apple would be the next one to get married or be partnered up.
Oh, wow.
So it was kind of Valentine's Day celebration. It wasn't in Valentine's Day. Pomona's feast day is actually the 13th of August. But somehow I guess it got later with the British harvest and it turned into more of a Halloween tradition. But yeah, that's where it comes from.
Yeah, I was always very good at it. Massive gob, isn't it? But it was always good because it was a game that you could. It was always like on at the church hall or school fete or something around Halloween, and it was a game and a snack at once. So I was always happy to pay my 10p or whatever it was to just get a bit of a snack.
Absolutely. I reckon we could do it with a range of other things as well. We can maybe branch out into other things that we might want to snack on. We could do like
bobbing for Haribo?
Well, you know, like gyoza and ramen.
Ramen bobbing. Get the fish balls out of the ramen. Mushroom out of broth. All mushrooms will
do you have to do it while it's still hot, though?
Oh yeah, that's part of
make
the
it a bit more challenging.
Yeah.
And if you want the extreme version, it's got chilies in the broth.
And that would make it a horror game.
Yeah, exactly.
So little bit of bonus content there about bobbing and all the things you might be able to bob. But I really think that it's been really nice to have a little think about, actually, what games do we enjoy this time of year? Because I feel like every year there's always a roundup of the best horror films. Oh, it's Halloween, it's the best horror films. Or like even just the best horror games. But it's nice that we've actually had a little bit of a think around that.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just about horror, it's about the atmosphere, those creepy things inspired by Halloween characters. And there's plenty of stuff out there. So, recommend some to us as well, listeners. And we'll play them. Because we've still got a couple of weeks to Halloween.
Excited.
Yeah. So I think that might bring us to the end of the pod. So this was just a little bit of bonus content for you. We hope you've enjoyed it. Something a bit different from us. But we're really enjoying just hanging out together tonight.
Do you know what? We've been a lot more sensible today. I don't know what's happened.
We're not drunk.
Well, maybe. I've had a couple of champagnes.
To be fair, we've been playing games for a few hours as well, so we got a lot of that energy out ahead of time.
Maybe that's what we need to do. We need to get all our excitement out of the way and then come and sit down while we're half asleep and do a sensible podcast that everyone can actually listen to and digest.
On a Sunday night before we go to sleep.
Yes.
Pass out. Well, I'm hungover, so I am going to pass out and have a good night's sleep, I'm sure. But thank you for tuning in for this latest edition of My Turn podcast. If you like what you hear, if you want to get in touch with us, just search My Turn with an exclamation mark on your podcast. I can't speak today. Podcast app of choice. We're on all of them. And if you are feeling up to it and you use Apple Podcasts at all, we would love a 5-star review because it really helps. But wherever you listen to your podcasts, please subscribe and share because it really helps us smaller, more petite podcasters to bob ourselves to the top of the charts. There we go.
Very good.
I was gonna something along the lines of Apple Bobcast. I was gonna go for. Go seek it out.
I was trying, but the hangover has prevented my brain cells from working. Well, we will catch you next time. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you. Bye.